G'day and welcome to this week's video. My name is Rowan and I'm a financial planner with Consortium Private Wealth. In today's video we're going to be looking at an aged care topic, and in particular understanding the refundable accommodation deposit, so the main fee when it comes to residential aged care. Before we kick things off though, a quick disclaimer to state that this is just general information only and definitely not applicable to anyone's situation in particular. Seek advice from a professional financial advisor if you've got a need for information and advice in this space. Now, to kick things off, starting from very much the basics, and obviously we're talking about residential aged care here, there's three fees we need to consider. The first being the basic daily care fee, and you can see the abbreviations that we use here on this page, and they'll be throughout the next few slides. So the basic daily care fee is one of the fees, through to the means tested care contribution fee and the refundable accommodation deposit. So the basic daily care fee, backtracking to that one, that is worth approximately $52 per day currently, and we're in almost December 2020 at the minute, and that gets indexed twice per year. Now, the means tested care contribution fee is calculated based on a resident's income and assets. So as assets and income fluctuate, either going up or going down, so too will that fee. So it's an additional fee based on for those residents who can afford to pay an additional amount in care. Now, the refundable accommodation deposit, or RAD for short, is the main fee we need to consider. This is this big lump sum cost that is often quite scary when it's spoken about around the family table, and the one decision that really needs a lot of respect and a lot of time taken to make sure the decision made is the correct one. Now, what fees to apply is very much important to understand the three different types of residents that may go into aged care. So not all fees apply to all these different classifications here. Now, I'll try to explain that a little further. Now, the three types of residents that can go into aged care are broken up into these three dot points here. They can either be a fully supported resident, a partially supported, or a standard resident. Now, starting with fully supported, now these are residents with assets below $50,500 as of right now, and that figure gets indexed a couple of times per year as well. So if your assets are below that amount, you will enter aged care. You will not be asked to pay the RAD, so that big lump sum contribution, and you will also not be asked to pay the means tested care contribution fee. So the only fee that applies to a fully supported resident is just that basic daily care fee, as I mentioned before, approximately $52 per day. Moving on to a partially supported resident. Now, these are generally residents with assets between $50,500 and up to $171,000. Now, a partially supported resident will pay a calculated RAD, or what's referred to as a RAC. So it's a refundable accommodation contribution. So this is the calculated amount is based on the resident's income and assets, and it is generally not as expensive as a standard resident. And in this case, a partially supported resident will not be asked to pay an ongoing means tested care contribution, but the basic daily care fee will apply. As an example, if a resident has assets worth approximately, let's say $120,000, their refundable accommodation contribution may equate to around $200,000 as a lump sum. Obviously, if we can bring down assets, so too will that contribution amount. Now, finally, the standard resident, and this applies to most situations, a resident will go into aged care with assets above $171,000. And generally speaking, if you own your own home, which also familiar has a cap value of $171,000, that will just tick you into that standard resident territory straight off the bat. So standard residents, so the majority of people will pay the deposit, they will pay the basic daily care fee, and they'll also be asked to pay an additional means tested care contribution. Thankfully, when it comes to the RAD, and this is what the basis of this presentation is all about, we want to understand the main obligation here. There's a bit of flexibility when it comes to paying this particular component. So a refundable accommodation deposit, you've got three options to fund this. And let's say, around our area, so around Horsham in the Wimmera, the average accommodation deposit is worth approximately $400,000 to $450,000. Now, if you've got the means to do so, you can pay that lump sum off in one hit. So a lump sum contribution paid all off in one go. Not many people can afford to pay that. So what they will often do is pay none of that at all. If that's the case, if their assets are tied up into, let's say, farming land as an example, and is expected to pass to the next generation, we can't afford to redeem these assets. What you can do is you can pay none of the RAD up front, but you'll be charged an interest-only payment, and this arrangement is called a daily accommodation payment, so a DAP for short. The current interest rate is approximately 4%, so quite expensive, and I often say to clients, if you've got this cash sitting in the bank earning, let's say 1% in a term deposit, it will work a little bit harder if you paid in the form of a lump sum contribution and reduce the interest-only amount that is otherwise charged at 4%. The last option, and the option we come across most often, is a combination of these two examples. And one sort of scenario I'll sort of showcase is, let's say the refundable accommodation deposit was quoted at $400,000. Now a resident may come up with $200,000, make a part payment, and that means the outstanding amount is also $200,000. The aged care facility will charge that outstanding $200,000 at their rate of approximately 4%, and an $8,000 per annum daily accommodation payment, so the DAP, will apply. So you paid part, lump sum, and part ongoing. A very common scenario. The main message I want to get across here is you do not have to sell the family home. It concerns the majority of the clients before they meet with me. Will the aged care facility take my home? Am I forced to sell it? And that's absolutely not. It's not the case. In some cases, we've worked out it's best to retain the home, and then you may decide to rent that out and generate a bit of lease income to help support any ongoing payments. So, number one message, you do not have to sell the house. Prior to aged care, there's a lot of opportunities in order to reduce future potential aged care fees. A lot of these strategies can only be implemented prior to a loved one entering aged care, so it's best to be on the front foot and have these conversations early. Now, what I'd like you to consider, if this is applicable to anyone watching, or they may have a mother or father which could be beneficial to their situation, definitely consider asset reduction strategies. So if you can reduce your assets and get in the fully supported resident territory, so assets below $50,500, or even into the partially supported territory, from a ongoing fees perspective, there are substantial savings to be had. You may consider, as part of the asset reduction strategy, setting up a granny flat right where the mother may be living in a house and they pass on the ownership to a son or daughter, and gives them the right to live in the house for the remainder of their life. The trick to that particular strategy is it's not to be expected that the loved one will require care within a 5-year period, but that's definitely valuable in the right circumstances. Gifting and funeral bonds play a part. We can't gift too much. It's only $10,000 per year, and the exemption under the funeral bonds as an investment is up to around the $13,000 mark presently. But if you're just borderline, just above these thresholds I mentioned before, these are some quick short-term strategies to get you below certain figures in order to change resident classification as a fully supported or partially supported, as an example. And the last dot point there I thought I'd mention is estate planning, and sort of how this plays out. If we have a mother and father, and let's say the family home's in the father's name, and under most wills, assets are shared between, they fall to the surviving spouse. From an estate planning point of view, in some cases it may be more beneficial, if the home is in one individual's name, to have that asset bypass each other and then go to the next generation. So we can sort of transfer a large, lumpy, accessible asset over through to the next generation. So in order to, bypass the surviving spouse, and that may mean they'll pay less fees in aged care in the future. You've got to pay particular attention to those estate planning strategies, and we've got to be mindful that estate planning wishes are met, because there can be a lot of confusion and a lot of potential arguments amongst the family group if everyone's not on board in those sort of circumstances. The best option you've got is to seek advice. Unfortunately, aged care from a financial point of view can be a minefield and very confusing. Definitely go have a yarn with someone who's qualified in that particular area, and you'll be able to get appropriate advice. And what I encourage most clients to do is seek advice early on. I hope that was beneficial. It's not all doom and gloom when it comes to understanding aged care fees. There are a number of strategies out there to help reduce costs. and a lot of excellent qualified professionals out there as well to provide advice. Thanks for watching. See you next time.